Alright, so in this lecture I'm going to continue from where I ended in the previous lecture by configuring the settings of the duplicator plugin. So let's get into it. So the first thing you wanted to do is to set up a few things. For example, the .htaccess file, which is a little bit advanced, but basically the .htaccess file, simply put, is responsible for your web host files and the way you access them. I'm not going to get into that now, so I'm going to just leave it. You also see that you can actually uninstall plugin settings and delete entire storage directory. Next, we have the ability to actually archive flush, which means that this is going to attempt to keep a network connection established for large archives. For example, if it takes a lot of time to create your website package, for example, if you have really big files, then you want to actually mark this archive flush. So I'm gonna just mark it. You see here recommended only for large archives. Anyway, I'm gonna do that in case of. So you see here that database build, you actually don't need to mess around with this at all. Just leave it per default. And I want to see the package debug. So I want to see what is happening actually. So I'm gonna just mark this, show package debug status in package screen. And finally, under the roles and capabilities, you can enable a user role editor plugin integration. This is out of the scope of this lecture and course. I'm gonna just click on save settings. And when this is done, let's go over to the packages, and it is here where the magic happens. So the first thing you need to do, as you can read here, no packages found, click the create new button. So naturally you want to click the create new button. Let's do that. All right, so now you see that there is a little handy navigation bar up here. So first it is the setup, second scan, 3 build, and finally the package is generated. So the first thing we need to do is to actually name this package to something. So I'm gonna just use the date of today and also the domain name, my old site domain. And if you click on storage, you can actually see that where it is going to be stored. So here is the search path where your website package is going to be stored. In professional, you can actually upload it to Amazon, Dropbox, Google Drive, and other online storage services, but it is not necessary really. So under archive, we have the ability to exclude certain file extensions. I'm not gonna mess around with this, and we can also enable file filters. Under database, you see that you can actually filter out different type of tables. This is only for someone who knows what he's doing, and do not mess with this if you are unsure of what those tables are for actually. And we have installer as well. All right, so the installer, this is something that we can enter later when we run the installer, so you don't have to care about this now, but in a perfect world, you would have already created a MySQL database on a new host and found out the host put, the database, and the user as well. However, I do not want to confuse you too much because we are going to create the database a little bit later in this course. And let's just leave this as it is and click on next and see what happens. Alright, so you see that it is scanning our site, and basically it runs a diagnostic to see whether everything's okay. So web server is fine, PHP setup, WordPress, the archive is fine as well. You see here that we get a warning actually, which is for large files. So let's click on large files, and here we can see that large files, for example, movies and other backed up data, can actually cause those timeouts. This basically means that we have a file that is larger than 3 megabytes. So this is actually not something that has gone bad, but it is just a warning that if we have issues creating a package, we might consider excluding those files and then add them manually later. Alright, so here you see for the database, everything's fine as well. And down here you see also that a warning status was detected. Are you sure want to continue? Well, yes, I think everything's fine. Let's click on build. And when we click on build, this is going to run for a few seconds, minutes, or sometimes even over an hour, depending on how huge your site is. The bigger the site is, the longer the time it is going to take. Pretty natural. So you see that our site is basically just over 60 megabytes, and we need both the installer and the archive. So I'm gonna just click on installer, and at the bottom left you see that it is saved, and we need archive as well. So this is a little bit bigger, so it will take few seconds to download it. I'm actually on a pretty high speed internet, so it is going pretty fast. Basically, the magic happens with the installer. I'm gonna show how the installer looks later. I'm not going to dig into it now. When this is downloaded, we are basically done for this lecture. Hang on, we have a lot more to cover, so stay tuned.